Hey folks, this is video number 4 over the Green Revolution and environmental consequences of agriculture. It's our last one. You should take a moment to set up your notes like these. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Green Revolution. And so let's just start with the basics. So when and where did this happen? So shortly after World War II, a lot of the industrialized, most developed countries in the northern hemisphere, so meaning countries like the United States and in Europe, began transferring a great amount of knowledge, and this includes things like technology, types of machinery, different uses of fertilizers, and other agricultural inputs to less developed countries in the southern hemisphere here. So one of the main beneficiaries of the Green Revolution is South America. But we also see a lot of impact in Asia as well. And so when we're thinking time frame, think late 1940s, 1950s, and the Green Revolution is basically goes up until the present day. The most impacted countries by the Green Revolution were India, Mexico, and Pakistan. And the goal of this, the reason why these northern hemisphere industrialized countries began sharing this knowledge was people started thinking about world hunger and how could it be ended. And so one of the ways that these people decided to try to help end world hunger was to share the GMO seeds. And so here is the what. So move on to like the key features, or what was the Green Revolution. It involves the biotechnology or genetic engineering of seeds. Scientists were trying to use this technology to help those poor countries produce a larger harvest without having to farm larger acreage. So we see the introduction and diffusion of high yield grains like corn, wheat, and rice. These grains are all dependent on irrigation, which is important to know. So these high yield grains were genetically engineered, so they were GMOs. And so remember, the purpose of a GMO is that it is the genes of the seed are remodified to assure that they can hold up to pesticides and herbicides used as fertilizers. And they are typically a little bit bigger and obviously healthier than non-GMO seeds. And so in addition to giving GMOs to these countries, we also see the use of chemical fertilizers instead of animal manure to enhance productivity as well. And so your big two of the Green Revolution is diffusion of GMOs and chemical fertilizers to these less developed countries. And lastly, we also see these LDCs start using tractors as opposed to traditional hand tools in their cultivation as well. If you look at this chart right here, you can see that after the United States, Brazil, Argentina, skip one, and then India are all some of the top 5 users of GMO across the world. And so India, Argentina, and Brazil are directly affected by that Green Revolution. So let's talk about the advantages or disadvantages of the Green Revolution. So some advantages are that number one, the goal was to eradicate hunger, and it did help alleviate hunger in some of those countries. Number two, it dramatically increased grain production. Grain production has never been higher, and even though people are still starving, the reason why is because of inadequate distribution systems, not the lack of food. So remember back from our population unit, patterns of global food distribution are affected by political systems, infrastructure, and patterns of trade. We have enough food thanks to this Green Revolution. The problem is getting access to it. And so on the local level, there may be these places called food deserts. And a food desert is a place in which it is hard to access a healthy meal option, such as like a grocery store, without the use of a car. And so on the local level, we see food deserts as one of the problems of food distribution. And then on the global level, we just know that the distribution of food is very uneven. Remember, MDCs consume about 8 times more than LDCs, and we waste a lot of food. So you can see in this graphic, we see almost 50% of our salads are wasted, 25% of fruits and vegetables are thrown out, 20% of bread and bakery items, and then 10% of meat and fish. So this is in the MDCs here. Because of the Green Revolution, though, agricultural productivity has been able to meet a global scale and has increased faster than population growth. So for the neo-Malthusians out there, right, who think that Malthus's theory could be applied today, we know that food production has long outpaced population growth. So some more advantages. Wheat production doubled in both Pakistan and India. You can see here on this graph. And by 1960, Mexico no longer had to import corn because production within the country was high enough to meet the demand. And so we do have solid evidence that agricultural productivity really increased. Many least developed countries became self-sufficient in growing grains and rice, so they were less reliant on those most developed countries to import goods from, and irrigated land doubled across the world. However, there are some disadvantages. First of all, the overall environmental impact, which we're going to talk about in the next section. But let me list them out here real quick for you. We see the reduction of soil fertility from overuse. Increased use of chemicals have worked to contaminate the air and groundwater supplies. Weeds have become resistant to pesticides over the past couple of decades. And with increased irrigation, we see decreased groundwater levels, which is causing a water shortage, which then causes conflicts. There are some overall health impacts to think about as well. Remember, scientists are still unsure of the long-term health effects of GMOs. And the increased use of antibiotics given to animals is leading to a resistance to antibiotics, a bacterial resistance to antibiotics. The third disadvantage is this idea of neo-colonialism. This means new colonialism. And these least developed countries, while they don't have to be dependent to import their staple crops from most developed countries, they are still indebted to these countries. Because of this sharing that happened in the Green Revolution. And also, farmers are more in debt than they ever have been before. And that's because they have to purchase these GMO seeds and pesticides and new farming equipment. This is very expensive. So the Green Revolution doesn't really address poverty at all. And although it has reduced famine worldwide, if you take a look at this map right here, Africa is one of the most famine-rich countries, or I'm sorry, continents in the entire world. And Africa has not been impacted by the Green Revolution at all. And here is why. GMO seeds are corn or wheat seeds, which cannot be grown in these dry regions in sub-Saharan Africa. Remember, those regions are more dependent on sorghum and millet as their wheats or their grains, so they have not been impacted at all by the Green Revolution. Okay, environmental consequences of agriculture. The first thing is deforestation. So, oops, sorry folks. Let me fix this real quick. So, deforestation. Forests cover about 31% of the land area on our planet. They produce vital oxygen and provide homes for people and wildlife. So many of the world's threatened and endangered animals also live in these forests. And you've got about 1.6 billion people that rely on the forest for things like food, water, clothing, traditional medicine, or shelter. And so deforestation can come in a lot of forms, including fires, cutting for agriculture and ranching, or development, as well as logging and degradation due to climate change. So each year, we lose about 48 football fields every minute of the rainforest. So this is about 46 to 58,000 square miles a year. And 17% of the Amazon has been lost in the last 15 years. And that's part of what you're seeing here in this graphic. And so this is primarily because of the conversion of the forest to cattle ranching. So rising demand has really created incentives to convert these forests to farmland or pasture land. And so once a forest is lost to agriculture, it is usually gone forever. And that means that the plants and animals that once lived there are also gone. So tropical deforestation is most common in Brazil, but we also see it really heavily in Indonesia. And the results of this is reduced biodiversity, increased greenhouse gas emissions, and increased soil erosion. And you can see here this graphic breaks down causes of the Amazon deforestation. Here you can see all of the places in the world that are impacted by deforestation rather than just the one image that I showed you. The Amazon is affected as well as the Congo Basin, and don't forget about what's going on in Indonesia. Okay, water scarcity is next. And so water shortages are caused by the destruction of natural wetlands, lakes, and streams to make room for agricultural land. So water quality is impacted by runoffs from chemical and fertilizers as well, or mismanaged manure. So here are some statistics. Agriculture consumes more water than any other source and wastes the majority of that water through inefficiencies like leaky irrigation or inefficient application methods. And also, water is wasted by having crops that require too much water in an environment which they don't get that water naturally. So sometimes specific crops are too thirsty for the environment in which they grow, and then we have to overuse the water to keep them alive. So increased irrigation for agriculture has led to diminishing of lakes and rivers around the world. And the image that you see right here is the Aral Sea. And this is found in Central Asia. And in the 1950s, the Soviet Union set up irrigation in Kazakhstan to cultivate both cotton and wheat. And they irrigated from the Aral Sea here. This created about 20,000 miles of canals and 80 water reservoirs. And the results of this was it decreased water levels and increased soil salinity. And this just means that there's a lot of salt in the soil, so it makes it less fertile and it dries out, so desertification. And so you can see this image here is what the Aral Sea has looked like from 2000 to 2012. As of 2012, this whole portion is completely dried up. Soil degradation is next. Large-scale erosion has formed this gully system right here. It's about 6 meters deep, and the cause of this erosion is overgrazing. So we've got a lot of goats and other livestock in Kenya where this photo is taken. And so this is what soil degradation looks like. It's the erosion, nutrient loss, or soil salinization, which means more salt in the soil. And the causes are overgrazing, deforestation, or the increased use of chemicals. So land is often transformed from a forest to another natural landscape, like a crop or a pasture. And this converted land is less able to soak up water, making flooding much more common, and then we see this soil degradation. And so results of this are desertification, increased flooding, clogged and polluted waterways, and overall the loss of any arable or usable land. So sustainable farming is the answer to all of these environmental impacts. And remember, that's just using natural resources in a way that are renewable. And so some examples of this are like organic agriculture or the Eat Local movement.